Thank you so much. Good morning. We are so excited to be here, and I'm glad we followed Michael up because I feel like we're a group of disruptors as well. So, as you heard in the introduction, I'm from Washington State University. We're all from the Pacific Northwest, and we're all working to revitalize a grain economy here in the Pacific Northwest. And for those of you familiar with grain production, in this region, you'll know that we have some of the highest yields and most productive farms in the world, not just in the country, but in the world when it comes to grain production. But over 95% of the grain that we produce here is exported. So very few of us have the opportunity to source local or regional grain to use, whether it's in our homes, in our institutions, in our restaurants. And so the work that we've all been doing for many decades, some of us, is to revitalize that regional grain economy that has really been diminished over the last 50 or 60 years throughout most of the country, but very much here as well. And I wanted to start out by defining terroir as well. How many of you are familiar with the term terroir? Great. Many of you. For those of you who aren't, it's the unique abiotic and biotic conditions that form the basis for the geography of a farm. So when we talk about grain production and terroir, we're really interested in what Michael was talking about, those local flavor characteristics that you get from a specific production system. So for myself, you heard a little bit about me. My background is as a biogeographer. So I got interested in grain because I was really interested in centers of origin and domestication. And our earliest crop domestication that we know of was in grain systems. And so I became very intrigued by grain and ended up studying African domestication. So I know a lot about pearl millet and African rice, a little bit about sorghum as well. And spent quite a bit of time on the East Coast working with the University of Maryland. And I was fortunate enough to come back to Washington, which is where I'm from, and work for Washington State University, and sort of gave up on grain, thinking, how am I going to use my background as a specialist in African cereals in this maritime Northwest as an agricultural faculty member at WSU. And I was fortunate enough to inherit the chairwomanship of the Cascadia Grains Conference. It's in our 7th year now. It's coming up in January 2019. And the Cascadia Grains Conference was really developed to support producers who were interested in participating in the grain economy outside of the commodity markets. And so we work every year to put together a large conference with millers, bakers, maltsters, basically everyone across the grain value chain who's looking at how they can revitalize or strengthen the grain economy outside of our traditional commodity market system. It's been really incredible to be able to work with the 3 people on the panel here throughout this experience and to see the opportunities arise to move from what was a conference into more of a movement, working with the WSU Bread Lab and the Grain Gathering, which predates the Cascadia Grains Conference, as well as the Huttons and all the work that they've done to revitalize the grain economy throughout Oregon. So without any other introductions from myself, I'm going to invite Steve to come up here and introduce himself. We're each going to go through just a brief introduction, and then I have panel questions that I'm going to be asking.